Hey guys, my name is Batimio, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but GameSpy is shutting down, and because of this, many Battlefield titles are going to be following suit. Battlefield 1942 would be affected, Battlefield 2, 2142, and Bad Company. All of these great Battlefield games could potentially be shut down because GameSpy, the GameSpy client, the one that does the matchmaking system, is gonna be no longer available. And so when I first learned about this, I admittedly was pretty upset. I love going back and playing these games, especially going back and playing Bad Company 2, easily one of my favorite Battlefield games of all time. It's still got a very healthy community, and learning that GameSpy was no longer going to be supported was a little worrisome. But to EA's credit, they have come out and said that they are trying to find a workaround for this. They are trying to make it so that these games don't get affected by it. You're still going to be able to play them after May 31st, and so I'm gonna say that this shouldn't be a problem for those titles, but this got me itching to go play a bunch of these games, and so I figured, you know, hey, let's go back and play all these great titles. And so the first on my list, I figured let's start from the very beginning, and so I popped in Battlefield 1942. This is a very old game, but one of the things that I really appreciated about it, and honestly I would love if they added into Battlefield 4, you know, who would have thought, a mechanic in Battlefield 1942 wishing it was in a current Battlefield game, is the way that they have set up the class selection. This screen right here is awesome because one of the great aspects of it is that it shows you how many players are playing what role. It tells you how many medics, how many people playing as an engineer, the assault. It gives you all of this information at your fingertips, and that is something that I would love to have in the modern Battlefield titles. Like, how cool would it be if you're playing on Operation Locker, you're normally playing as the assault class, but once you die, you realize that your entire team only has 1 to 2 support players. This would be a pretty good indication that you should switch on over to the support class, get a ridiculous amount of points because everyone is starving for ammunition, and now you've just ranked up 5 levels in just because of that information. Like, it just makes sense, you know? When should I play as the support? When should I play as a recon? Oh, there's already 10 recons on my team. I should probably play as an engineer and try to take out those tanks. Like, that information would be just simply fantastic, and honestly, I just feel like this should be mandatory in modern Battlefield titles. It just makes sense. And then I switched on over to Battlefield 2. This was my go-to first-person shooter. Actually, it was the first-person shooter that got me involved in the genre to begin with. Like, I loved this game, but one of the things that I completely forgot about is the amount of grenade spam. It is hell on some of these maps, and if you're playing on Strike at Karkin at the very beginning, where both teams are in this death lock at the very start, it is a nightmare. Like, people, all they're doing all game long is spamming grenades. You can sit on an ammo bag, you start off with like 4 or 5 grenades to begin with, and they are just ridiculously deadly and efficient. And what's so funny about it is that I think what it really just came down to is that they were powerful, they did a lot of damage, but it was also simply because they gave you so many grenades at your disposal. Like, if I have 4 or 5 grenades, why not just toss them everywhere? I could get a random free kill, I could do a little damage to the enemy, and so you just see people constantly tossing these things everywhere. And what's funny about it is you would think that DICE would learn their lesson all the way back in Battlefield 2, and actually I would say that they did. Like, Battlefield Bad Company 2 didn't have as much grenade spam, Battlefield 3 didn't have nearly as much, but then when you get all the way in Battlefield 4, they once again give you an absurd amount of grenades at your disposal. Minis you get 3, Impact you get 2, and because of that, people are going to throw them everywhere. I would not say it was as bad as Battlefield 2. Like, Battlefield 4, yes, on certain maps, grenade spam can get a little ridiculous, but I cannot tell you how many times I died to grenades in that game. I think I died more to grenades throughout my entire couple hours that I played than primary weapons. Like, it was that ridiculous. But overall, I had a lot of fun going back and playing Battlefield 2. Once I got past the fact that I just had to accept that I was going to die to grenade spam, it was enjoyable. The one thing that is way different from that game, from modern first-person shooters, is that you can't hold down the trigger to auto-fire people in this. Like, if you hold down the trigger for more than half a second, your bullets are gonna fly in every single direction. Like, the bullet spread on all of the weapons is easily over 9,000. Like, it is incredible. And I actually had the most success going into single-fire mode. Like, when I was using what I thought to be for automatic weapons where I would try just to tap fire with them. Nope, I just found that going into single fire mode, I was way more accurate with it. I could get headshots, I could drop people way faster with that, and it did take some time getting used to that. Like when I play Battlefield 4, when I play really any modern first-person shooter, I assume that I'm going to be able to go at least somewhat fully automatic on people, but even if I was using a light machine gun, even if someone was 2 feet in front of me, fully automatic, bullets were whizzing every single direction and I wasn't getting any hit markers. And so that was one thing I did have to get acclimated to. Sadly, I could not find my disc for Battlefield 2142. I know it's in my home somewhere. It's probably in a box in some corner. And so I had to switch on over to Bad Company 2. And instead of playing just the core game, I decided to play the expansion pack Vietnam. This was easily my favorite DLC of all time. DICE outdid themselves with this expansion pack. Most DLCs these days for modern games, they're usually just an extension of the core gameplay. They give you a couple new maps, a couple of new weapons if you're lucky, there'll be a couple new vehicles, but that's about it. With the Vietnam expansion pack, it was like an entirely different game, but set in the Battlefield universe. It was in a completely different setting. It wasn't a modern setting like it was for the core game. They went all the way back to the Vietnam War. You got brand new weapons. They tweaked the weapon balance. For the most part, all weapons did more damage. New vehicles, like the entire thing was simply incredible. And for the most part, I think that was the general consensus amongst the Battlefield community. Like everyone that I talked to, they look back on Vietnam and they had a positive outlook on it. It was well balanced. Sure, weapons did a little bit more damage and that did take some getting used to, but the fact that it was completely different from the core game, but still similar, it still felt like Battlefield. It still felt like it, but man, it was just such a good expansion pack. And one of the things that I had to try out was the M40 sniper. This weapon was a god amongst men. It hit so hard that even if the target was like 30 to 40 meters out, you didn't even need to get a headshot. And even if you wanted to get a headshot, it was pretty easy. There isn't a lot of bullet drop. I don't know why, but there's nowhere near as much bullet drop for the Vietnam expansion pack when you compare it to like Battlefield 3 or Battlefield 4, and so lining up shots wasn't that difficult. And even though that most weapons did more damage, if you got good with the M40, you could go on some ridiculous rampages. Like I think even during my play session, I wanted a 15 kill streak after the first couple of minutes jumping into the game. I don't know if this weapon was quote unquote overpowered. I think for the most part people would say that it was on the overpowered section of the scale, but it was just such a ridiculous fun weapon to use. I had so many good moments using this gun back in the day, going on kill streaks, killing people back to back, and so I just had to use this weapon. As for the core game, Bad Company 2, I went and played some squad deathmatch, and boy, does squad deathmatch work in this game. I recently went back and played some squad deathmatch in Battlefield 4, and while it's enjoyable, I don't know what it is about Bad Company, but just the maps work for that game mode in general. The action is fast paced. You can work with your squad mates. You can really lock down the map and have a very enjoyable gameplay. And while I would say that you can sort of have that in Battlefield 4, there's something magical about Bad Company 2 that just works for squad deathmatch. And so I was playing as the engineer. I rolled around as the assault. I also dabbled a little bit with some rush using some of the light machine guns, and overall just having a good time. Like, this game was phenomenal. One thing that I did notice though is that I was trading with enemies every once in a while, and it's funny to say that because everyone, when they think back about Bad Company 2 or previous Battlefield titles, they're always like, oh man, the netcode was so much better, you never traded with your enemies, you never got killed behind walls. And while I would say that in Bad Company 2 it's nowhere near as Battlefield 4, it wasn't like this god game where it was flawless. Like, it did have its problems. I was trading with enemies every once in a while in this game, and so it was just amusing going back and seeing that. It didn't get me frustrated, probably because I'm just used to it in Battlefield 4, but it's amusing that so many people in the current modern Battlefield games claim that the past was so much better, but they're probably just looking through it with nostalgic goggles, and it's skewing what actually happened. And so overall, I'm hoping that EA is going to be able to find a workaround for all of these great games. Like, sure, I probably won't go back and play Battlefield 1942, but what's surprising is that it still has a very healthy community. It has a bunch of servers still going, and that game is more than, I think, 10 years old. It's just ridiculous how many people are still playing that game, and it would be a shame if EA wasn't able to find a workaround. But that is about it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what your favorite Battlefield title was. Is it the recent games? Is it something more around Battlefield 2 or Battlefield 2142 era? Let me know down below in the comment section. Until tomorrow, have a good one and take it easy.